So take me through, because this is the time period where when we kind of broke away, right? So 2002, 2003, when I made the big move to Florida, and then you ended up inevitably going back up north, right? Back to Canada. What's that next 10 years look like with what you were doing with your business and growing your brand?
Right. Okay. So for anybody who's listening, I live in Newfoundland, Canada. And one of the memories that I will never forget was when 9/11 happened, because we were there and we were watching that live.
Yes.
And, I was there just outside the city. For me, it was a very surreal experience, just like it was for everybody else, but we were pretty close. Where all the planes landed and where the Broadway show Come From Away is based is Newfoundland. So I ended up moving to Newfoundland because Charles had a colleague who he went to McMaster with, who was, his name is David Boehm. Now, if anybody here listening is a stretching person, he did a TED Talk on it. This guy has had over 100 publications in the field of exercise science. He's a huge stretching stability guy. And so I went up to do my master's degree under him. And I came up to Newfoundland. When I first got here, they didn't have a strength coaching program or even athletic therapy program. So if you remember the movie Major League,
of course, who doesn't? One of the best baseball movies of all time.
The best, right? However, it teaches you how to do athletic therapy on a budget. Because remember, they had a pool where they put like a motorboat engine.
Yes, I do recall. Yeah.
Well, we have no problem getting.
If I'm not mistaken, it was Tom Berenger sitting in it.
Yes,
and I don't know if it was Wesley Snipes who was the other. They were pulling it to start it, and then that was their ice bath after a game.
Well, I didn't have one that fancy. Okay.
oh boy. Okay.
So we got up there and, we were just starting to make it work. They had a good athletic therapy program, mind you. And I'm not trying to bash the school. It's just that it was something that was new because, that wasn't at the forefront. And so I did best I could. We got an old garbage, those big bins they push around buildings that are kind of angled in the front. Got one of those, and we took some old bleachers and built it and took snow because we have no problem getting snow and ice here, right? Threw that inside, made us things started with an old hockey stick, and we made an ice bath and started doing, periodization programs for all the teams. And I showed up day one, and I was like, over the summer, I did up all the sports teams program. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know the coaches, didn't know the players, but I knew the fundamentals. And, this is sort of generic because I knew they didn't have anything. So I did up periodized programs for all the teams and was like, I'd like to be your strength coach for like nothing. I just really want to do this. And they were like, well, okay, sure. So then I kind of set this up. And as a result, where I live is the capital city of our province or state, but there's not that many people here, like less than 300,000. And so before long, people started asking questions. Here's a fitness guy around and he's got all this energy and whatever. And so I got approached about starting a gym. So I started a gym, and so that was like right away. I was a personal training gym. We took an old Victorian building downtown, and I renovated it all myself. I had no money. I sold my car to get some startup. I had a business partner who contributed some finances to begin with as well.
Was that the black Mustang that you sold?
It was. That was useless in Canada anyway. What do you need a rear-wheel drive for in Canada? Right? So that was dumb to have. So I got rid of that, sold that, and, basically became a carpenter for 6 months, renovated this old building. And when we moved here, you're going to love this. We went to the bank, the Business Development Bank, and St. John's is a port city, a beautiful port city. If anybody's ever looking for a vacation, when the world opens up again, some of the best food in the world, very cosmopolitan, a lot of oil and gas. So it's like a nice city. And, but they didn't understand the fitness side. So I had to take a banker around and show them where we were going to have a facility and convince them that somebody would be willing to pay, get this, $20 an hour for personal training. And that's what we had to start with. I know. And we had to sell out the business before we even opened the doors on a concept that had never been seen. So it was a really hard sell. Anyway, we got it open. We started. And before we knew it, we started getting a lot of executives and people that were like, just like our client base was when we were down in Connecticut. Yep. Right. And one of the guys was an expat English guy, and he was a former track star from England, and he was a rig manager for an oil rig that was floating off the coast. And he said, the people here that work out there, they've got the hardest job I've ever seen in oil and gas. They're in the middle of the freezing cold North Atlantic. It is brutal out there, and their health isn't great, and their diets aren't great. Their exercise isn't great. Can you go out and help them? And so I flew out, and I saw them wearing gloves, and I saw them wearing steel-toe boots, But like the thing I came up with was that more people lose their fingers or their toes from diabetes than they do from something falling on it. And they were feeding them ice cream and deep fried foods and all this other stuff. And we started working with them before we knew it. It ended up, catching on, and we went around the world. So that's kind of where it took me. And then within that, we also did a television program that was national. It was a body transformation program before reality TV was a thing, which was kind of cool. So it was just a really cool environment to come to because you got a chance to try out everything because it was a blank canvas.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, there was no one else doing that work. How quickly did this catch on? You're out there, you're seeing what's going on one of these, rigs floating out in the middle of the ocean, and all of a sudden you're just changing gears and saying, wow, I can like create an entire wellness program centered around helping men and women like this all around the world. And then before you know it, you're a world traveler doing this kind of work.
It was really interesting, but here's why. Because the big companies, and I can say them like the ExxonMobils, Transoceans, the companies we work with, only had one rig in that region each. So there was big players, but they were there on a small level. So it was a perfect little lab for them to try out new stuff, right? And then because we had a bit of notoriety locally, we got accepted by the crew. So they had seen the shows or they had done different things and they understood, who we were. And they were like, okay, it's cool, and then we earned our stripes like you would at anything. It's like being in military or anything else. You got to earn your stripes, do your time and blah, 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 and then learn the jobs. And so I had an ergonomics background and things like that as well, right? So we developed programs for the galleys to cook healthy food, but we didn't tell them how to do it. We had contests where they applied the knowledge we taught them on how to make healthy dishes that work for 150 people at a time. And then we looked at their safety programs about soft tissue injuries, because that's a huge thing. And we saw the injuries they had were the same as the athletes I trained. So we were working on rotator cuffs and bad knees and bad backs and all that type of stuff, giving them rehab. And then we started looking at the mental health side of things, and they were isolated, and how can health make a difference for that? And before you know it, the morale was up, safety performance improved, and just so you know, every injury costs $100,000 minimum. So you reduce a company's soft tissue injuries by 5. One company, we brought it down by 18 in 1 year for like a $200,000 or $100,000 contract. Like, that's a huge return on investment. And then all of a sudden they're like, this is good business. Do you want to go to the Gulf of Mexico? Do you want to go to the North Sea? And do you want to go to Russia? And we said, sure.
Unbelievable.
Really strange,
cool. And and this explains a little bit why we lost touch with each other. This guy's traveling the world, helping people all over the place. And, there was a big gap there where we touch base now and again and stuff. But, you go from spending every waking moment with somebody, right, for several years. And then all of a sudden it's like a phone call every like 3 or 4 years. It's just not quite enough. It happens to all of us, right?
I know. But that's true. We would work together all day long, and after work we go hang out.
That's right. Oh, Mike and I were always together. We used to jam together. Mike could play guitar, I played drums. We both would sing a little bit. I mean, there was nothing that we didn't give a try, Yeah. So we were together all the time. It was great. Well, it's so interesting because, again, this is something so foreign to most people, is like the life of someone that's like working out in the middle of nowhere. And like you said, you talked about their nutrition being off, and then their physical, their physical activity and stuff being messed up there. And then talk about the mental side of it. These people are isolated from the world. Do they work out there in windows of time and shifts before, and then they have time where they can go back to land, or what?
3 weeks at a time. You're 300 miles away from your family. The internet was not fiber up. You have a phone, you know what I mean, to call them. It is harsh. It's freezing cold, North Atlantic. And here's the thing. Health becomes really important, because if you have a heart attack, you're not getting to the hospital soon. I remember one time I'd go out for like 4 days. Everybody else go for 3 weeks. I would go to 4 days, but I was dealing with a bunch of rigs, and I had group of people that we all started sending out coaches all over the world, and a great team in Houston, by the way, if they're listening. They were awesome, super fun group of people down there too. But I went out one time and there was this guy who had to get home for something important, his kid's recital or something. So I said, okay, I'll get the next flight that's coming an hour later because there was 2 flights that day. And then the fog socked in. I was out there for 7 more days because I gave up my seat on this thing. And that's the way it was. People would miss Christmas and everything else. So stressful. But so if you need to get a chopper to get it's not like, and I was in the Gulf of Mexico one time and I was in a lineup on one of the rigs down there and I was in my shorts. So we have to get in a survival suit and you're got like this breathing apparatus. And I'll talk about what my PhD was in because there was a terrible tragedy that happened here that I helped try to look at the human factors associated with it. But you have to wear this full survival suit because the water's 0 degrees and whatever. And I was on the Gulf of Mexico and it's rig in my shorts with my iPods in my ear. And the guys were really upset. They were like, oh man, I'm going to be late. And I was like, what? They're like, the chopper's 15 minutes late. I started laughing. I was like, what? 15 minutes? I was like, I've been like 15 hours is minimal, so it was just kind of funny, the difference that they have. So it was good, but I'll tell you, when you do spend time in those environments, you develop a rapport with people and then you get to find out what's really going on. And as a result of being in those harsh environments, I got a really good idea of what life is like out there and what their challenges are. And that helped me when I got to easier environments.
Wow.
Yeah.
And to this day, what are those wellness programs that you've created from ground zero? What do those look like now? I mean, those are kind of off and moving on their own, and there's other people that have kind of carried the torch, so to speak, with those.
Yeah, so like the world has kind of become much more oriented in wellness. But one of the things I can be really proud of is so a little bit of a side story was that. There was a helicopter crash that occurred here, okay? So when we go offshore, we had to spend like a week of our life going through a helicopter simulator where they flip you upside down. You got to kick a window out and you got to get to the surface and you got to do all this training. And so you feel really confident that if something terrible happened, you could get out of that thing, okay? So this chopper was flying offshore and this was full of my friends and colleagues and like people I really cared about, and the engine shut down. So the emergency procedure was to go higher because then the wind would push the propellers and kind of make you coast down to the water because the wind would get it moving. But what happened was the gearbox blew, so the oil leaked out, so the engine seized. So all they did was go higher so they could drop further. When they dropped further, the G-forces they think were so strong around their midsection in particular, because a lot of these guys carry weight around their midsection, that they might have passed out and only one person survived, and he made it to the surface. And he was a tall, lean fella with a mariner background. He was very fit, very active, and he still broke his back. And so all this training they did wasn't even relevant because none of them were really awake. And so then all of a sudden it was like health is even more important now, because if you're not physically even able to be alert to handle that, just like you would never put an astronaut or a fighter pilot, this is part of the emergency. So I did my PhD in programming that was like realistic and practical that can be used, and it worked. You can implement with a whole group of people. And as a result of that, something that I'm probably most proud of in my career was that's mandated, that every company has to, based on the regulator in the area and the industry, have a wellness program that's based in science and is a real wellness, not like a tech in the box, like a newsletter type thing, like a real wellness program. So that's kind of cool. That was kind of nice to leave that mark.
It's unfortunate that it takes a tragedy to get something like that implemented, but oftentimes in life, that's what it is, right? It really resets us, and people realize, okay, we need to do better at this. And so that next time that something like that happens, there's no casualties. And
no one even thought that health would be a factor. And it probably wasn't when they developed the test 15 years ago, but the way people's bodies are changing these days, that are not being cognizant of their health, that weight, obesity probably wasn't an issue when they developed the training.